Marcus didn't just walk out the door, he detonated a bomb he'd spent a year building, with 3 different women holding 3 different triggers. He left me with divorce papers designed to steal our historic home, the one I poured my soul into restoring. He thought his 3-front war would break me, but he forgot I'm the one who knows where all the wiring is buried, and I just found his old phone. The air in the grand hall always hangs heavy on Tuesday nights. It is the sheer weight of the low-country humidity pressing against 200-year-old plaster. I should know. I matched the original lime wash myself. Spent weeks sourcing pigment that would breathe properly. This house, this magnificent, sprawling piece of Charleston history, was not just where I lived. It was my portfolio, my thesis, my sanctuary. It was the project that had finally cemented my name as one of the most sought-after architectural preservationists on the coast. 5 years. I had poured 5 years of my life into saving it from ruin, personally overseeing every detail, from the structural supports in the carriage house to the hand-painted gasoliers in the ballroom. Marcus, my husband, never understood that. He saw the house as an asset, a backdrop. He was a financial consultant, the polished, handsome face of a startup he called Viridian Dynamics. It was always a vague, nebulous venture, full of buzzwords like synergy and disruption. He wore the expensive suits I bought him and hosted parties in the garden I restored, using my reputation as collateral for his own. Our life looked perfect. We were the couple you read about in glossy magazines, the artist and the entrepreneur, restoring beauty to the world. But beneath the reclaimed 19th century heart pine floors, the foundation of our marriage was cracking. The tension was not structural, it was financial. Marcus was always reinvesting profits from Viridian, always on the verge of a massive breakthrough that never quite materialized. The accounts felt thin, even when his talk was big. This Tuesday was different. The fight had been simmering for weeks, but it finally boiled over by 9 p.m. in the library. It started, as it always did, with money. The second mortgage. "I am just saying, Ilara," Marcus said, his voice dangerously smooth as he swirled the last of his bourbon in a crystal glass. "If you had not insisted on the authentic fittings for the guest bathrooms, maybe we would not be in this position." I stopped, my hand frozen on a blueprint. "The fittings. You want to talk about the fittings? I am the only one bringing in actual, tangible income. Marcus, your dynamics are just vapor. We are paying for this house, for your suits, for your entire life, with my reputation." "My extravagance," I finally snapped, the word echoing off the high, coffered ceiling. "This house is my business. It is what I do. You knew that when we bought it." "I knew you were talented, not that you were financially reckless," he shot back. His face, usually so composed for his investors, was tight with a resentment I had not seen before, or perhaps I just had not wanted to see it. "This obsession with the house, it is strangling us. It is strangling me." The argument escalated, a vicious spiral of accusations. I was defending my work, my life's passion. He was attacking it, tearing down the very walls I had so carefully rebuilt. Then, silence. He stopped pacing. He stood by the mahogany desk, the one I had salvaged from an estate in Savannah and spent 6 months refinishing. "I cannot live like this anymore. Ilara," he said. His voice was flat, dead. "I am done." "Done?" I asked, a hollow laugh escaping me. "Done with what?" "The argument, Marcus. Do not be so dramatic." He did not answer. He just looked at me, his eyes cold and empty. He walked past me, out of the library and up the grand staircase. I heard the click of suitcase wheels on the old flooring, a sound that did not belong. He came back down seconds later, not with the leather weekend bag I recognized, but with a sleek, black rolling carry-on, a bag I had never seen before. He paused at the front door, the massive 8-foot cypress door I had personally stripped and sealed. He did not look at me. "My lawyer will be in touch," he said, his hand on the brass handle, "about dividing the assets." And then he was gone. The door closed with a heavy final thud that vibrated in my chest. I stood there for I do not know how long. An hour. 2. The silence of the house, usually my comfort, was deafening, oppressive. This was wrong. It was just a fight, a terrible fight, the worst we had ever had. But he would be back. He would drive around, cool off, and come back apologizing, just like he always did. I walked back into the library, my legs shaking. My whole body felt like it was buzzing, disconnected from my brain. I reached for the phone to call him, to tell him this was insane, but my hand stopped. On the desk, next to the lamp, was his old tablet, the one he supposedly replaced months ago but kept for articles. He never left that tablet. He was meticulous about his technology, neurotic about his digital security. And that bag, it was not a bag you pack in a moment of anger. It was a bag you pack with a plan. The wheels were clean. The tags were new. It was a go bag. The first real, cold spike of fear cut through the shock. This was not an argument that got out of hand. This was an execution. He had not just left. He had departed. My eyes fixed on the tablet. The screen was dark, but I could feel it pulsing with answers I did not want. He had left it. He forgot it. Or maybe a tiny, terrified voice whispered in my head as I reached for it. He wanted me to find something. Sleep was impossible. The house was too quiet, the absence of Marcus too loud. I sat in the library until the first gray light of dawn started to filter through the magnolias outside, turning the room from pitch black to a cold, flat blue. The tablet was heavy in my lap. I had not touched it for hours, just stared at it, my stomach churning with a toxic mix of dread and denial. He would be back. This was a nightmare. He would walk in, apologize, and I would throw this stupid tablet in the fireplace. But my hand was already moving. I pressed the power button. The screen flared to life, bright and accusing. It was unlocked. He never left anything unlocked. It was synced to his iMessage. The screen populated instantly, a long, scrolling list of blue and gray bubbles. My breath hitched. This was it. The moment I crossed a line. The moment I became the wife I never wanted to be, the one who snoops. But he had left the door open. Hadn't he? He had left the bag, the lawyer, the tablet. This was an invitation. A name near the top was pinned Jenna. The last message was from just a few hours ago, right before the fight. My thumb, shaking, tapped on the name. The screen filled with a cascade of banal, sickening intimacy. Emojis I had never seen him use. Hearts. Kissing faces. Inside jokes. Jenna. I knew Jenna. She was his assistant, a girl barely out of college. 24. Maybe. She wore clothes that were too tight for the office and laughed too loudly at his jokes. I had dismissed her as harmless, a cliché. I was wrong. I scrolled. For months. Plans for late meetings that were clearly dinners. Excuses he had fed her about me, which she lovingly fed back to him. Jenna, you deserve to be happy, not stuck with someone so cold. Marcus, she just does not get it. She is all business. All she cares about is that house. Jenna, I will take care of you tonight. I booked the room at the Bennett. Just get through this. I felt a hot, acidic wave of nausea rise in my throat. My vision swam. This was the reason. A sordid, predictable affair with his assistant. He had blown up our entire life, our marriage, for this. The sheer, pathetic banality of it was an insult. I felt less betrayed than embarrassed. He was a stereotype. I almost threw the tablet down. I had the answer. It was ugly. It was cheap. But it was the answer. He was leaving me for her. I gripped the edge of the mahogany desk, steadying myself. The room felt like it was tilting. I had to close the message thread. I could not read any more of their fawning, high school-level declarations. My thumb swiped back to the main list. But as I did, my eye caught a different message from Jenna, sent 2 days ago. I had missed it in the sea of pink hearts. Jenna Sloan says the appraisal on the house will be done Friday. You sure about this? I froze. I read it again. And a third time. Sloan. My mind raced. Who was Sloan his lawyer? The one he mentioned. Why was his 24-year-old mistress in contact with his divorce lawyer? Why would she be discussing the appraisal of my house? The nausea was gone, replaced by a sudden, sharp, icy clarity. Something was deeply wrong. I went to his contacts. I typed in Sloane. The entry was not Sloan-esque, it was Sloan Davenport, and her title was not attorney at law, it was fund managing partner. I did not know a Sloan Davenport. He had never mentioned her. I clicked on the message thread with Sloan. The tone was not fawning. It was not emotional at all. It was cold, precise, and utterly ruthless. It was like reading a foreign language, all acronyms and figures. Sloan Wire confirmed. Phase 1 is complete. Viridian is insulated. Marcus good. What is the timeline on the primary asset Sloan appraiser is booked for Friday? As requested. We need the valuation to match our projections for the liquidity push. Marcus. It will. I have the numbers. She overspent on the restoration, but the comps in the neighborhood are high. It is our biggest line item. Sloan. It needs to be. The Austin investors are getting nervous. We move to phase 2 as soon as the sale is initiated. We cannot let her hold this up in court. Is she ready, Marcus? She will be. I am handling it tonight. I dropped the tablet. It clattered loudly on the antique wood, the sound echoing in the cavernous silence of the library. My house. My restoration. My work. They were not just messages. They were minutes from a meeting. A conspiracy. They were talking about my home. Our home. They called it the primary asset. They were talking about maximizing liquidity and a post-sale plan. I am handling it tonight. Last night's fight, the extravagance, his anger. It was all a script. He was not leaving me because he was angry. He was performing anger so he could leave. Jenna was not the reason. She was a smokescreen. The real betrayal, the cold, calculating, financial one, was with this woman, Sloan. This was not a divorce. This was a hostile takeover. My mind was reeling, trying to process the disconnect. Marcus had told me, my lawyer will be in touch. But Sloan was not a lawyer. She was a fund managing partner. He had lied. That simple, deliberate lie unlocked a new door of horror. This was not a marriage collapsing under the weight of an affair. This was a building being strategically demolished, and I was still inside. Viridian Dynamics. The Austin investors Sloan mentioned. My house. It was all one big, dirty pool of money. He was planning to liquidate my life's work, the asset I had created, to fund his escape. I felt dizzy, the room spinning slightly. I forced myself to breathe, to look at the screen again. If Sloan was the real plot, and Jenna was the distraction, what else was I missing? I scrolled back to the main message list, my thumb numb and cold. I scanned down, past names I recognized, contractors, friends, his mother. And then I saw it. A name with no photo. A thread that was muted. The notifications were disabled. Isabel. The air left my lungs in a painful rush. It was not a gasp. It was a vacuum. Isabel. Isabel was his ex-wife. The one he had been married to for a decade before he met me. The one he always spoke about with a kind of weary, tragic pity. She never quite recovered, he would say, shaking his head. She is just not built for the world. Alara, emotionally unstable. He claimed he had to help her, sending her money every month, which I had thought was noble. I had pictured a frail woman, broken by their divorce, living in a small, sad apartment. I had pitied her. I had felt guilty for my own happiness, my own strength, my own beautiful, solid house. My finger, shaking so hard I could barely control it, tapped the name. The messages were not like Jenna's, full of breathless, juvenile lust. They were not like Sloane's, cold and transactional. These were intimate, not just sexual, but pathologically familiar. They spoke in a we that had clearly never ended. They talked about their past. They talked about their future. This was not a rekindling. This was an unbroken line. I scrolled up, my stomach clenching violently. The dates went back. Months. A year. Further. Then I saw the recent ones. From last week. Isabel. Just a few more weeks, my love. I am counting the seconds. After that house is sold, we can finally start over in Austin, just like we always wanted. Austin. The same Austin investors Sloane was managing. Marcus. I miss you. It is almost over. Ilara will not know what hit her. She is so wrapped up in her precious project. We will have everything. The money. The new life. Everything we deserved. Isabel. She took you from me. Now we are taking it all back. I dropped the tablet. This time it hit the floor, the screen shattering with a sickening crack. I did not care. I slid from the chair, my back hitting the antique desk, and landed hard on the floor. I could not feel it. I finally understood. It was not one betrayal. It was three. A coordinated three-pronged attack. Jenna, the 24-year-old assistant. She was the decoy, the obvious, tawdry cliché. He wanted me to find her messages. He left the tablet so I would discover the affair, get hysterical, and focus my anger on her. He wanted me to think this was a simple divorce over infidelity. Sloane, the financial partner. She was the brains, the mechanism. She was the one weaponizing my own assets against me, building the legal and financial trap to strip the house away before I even knew I was in a fight. And Isabel, the emotionally unstable ex-wife. She was the motive, the entire endgame. He was not just leaving me, he was using me. He had used my talent, my reputation, and my income for 5 years to build a nest egg. Not for us, but for them. The money I thought I was spending on his suits and his company. The money he helped her with it was all going into the same pot. He had been planning this for years. The fight last night. His sudden rage about the restoration costs, it was pure theater, a staged performance, designed to justify his exit, to initiate Sloane's Phase 2, and to leave me shattered and confused, fighting a ghost while he and Isabel walked away with my life. I sat on the cold wooden floor of my library, surrounded by the work of my hands, and I did not cry. The shock was too deep, too absolute. It had burned away the grief instantly, leaving behind something else, something hard and sharp and terrifyingly clear. I stared at the spiderweb cracks on the tablet screen. The device was dead, but the messages were burned into my memory. The initial shock, the feeling of being hollowed out, was already hardening. It was like watching plaster set. The wet, agonizing grief was calcifying, second by second, into something solid and cold, something structural. The pain did not just fade, it evaporated. It was burned off by the sheer, white-hot audacity of the plan. He had left the tablet. He had wanted me to find it. He had wanted me to find Jenna. That was the key. He knew I was methodical. He knew I would look. He served me the perfect, easily digestible betrayal and affair with a subordinate. He wanted me on my back, emotionally gutted, weeping over a 24-year-old, blinded by a rage so common it was almost boring. He wanted me to be the wronged wife, so busy fighting her that I would not even see the real enemy Sloane. I would not see the financial filings, the asset transfers, the calculated theft of my home until the ink was dry and the moving vans were at the curb. And he never, ever intended for me to find Isabel. She was his private victory, his ultimate prize. My God. He did not just underestimate me, he fundamentally misunderstood the woman he had been married to for 5 years. He thought I was just the creative type, all emotion and aesthetics. He forgot that to restore a 200-year-old mansion, you cannot just be an artist. You have to be an engineer, a chemist, a historian, and a ruthless project manager. You have to understand, down to the studs, what is supporting the load and what is purely decorative. Jenna was decorative. Sloan was the load-bearing wall of his fraud. Isabel was the foundation he built it all on. I stood up. My knees did not buckle. My hands were perfectly still. I went back to the library desk, retrieved my own laptop, and plugged the shattered, dead tablet into it. The drive mounted. Of course it did. He had left it unlocked. After all, he had wanted it to be easy. I did not spend the rest of the night crying. I spent it working, methodically. I went through every single file, every message, every email, every cached web page. I took screenshots of the threads with Jenna, Sloan, and Isabel. I cross-referenced the dates of their messages with his calendar, the late meetings with Jenna, the investor calls with Sloan, the charity weekends that lined up perfectly with Isabel's messages about them being together. I created a new, encrypted email account and sent every single file to myself, a silent digital mountain of evidence. I backed it up to a new, password-protected cloud drive. I downloaded his entire contact list. When I was done, I took a legal pad and a pen. In the center, I wrote Marcus. I drew 3 lines radiating outward. Jenna decoy, Sloan mechanism, Isabel motive. Then, I drew a circle around the entire diagram and wrote one word, the house. It was all there, a business plan, a con. I did not call him. I did not text him, screaming. I did not call my mother or my sister or my friends to fall apart. To do so would be to follow his script. I would not give him the satisfaction of knowing I had found it, and I certainly would not give him the hysterical wife he was expecting. Instead, I walked upstairs to our bathroom, my bathroom. I turned the shower on, twisting the handle all the way to the right. The water came out in an icy sheet. I stepped in without flinching, letting the cold shock my system, washing away the last remnants of the woman I was 12 hours ago. I scrubbed my skin until it was red. By 6:55 a.m., I was downstairs in the kitchen I designed, dressed in my sharpest work clothes. I made a full 32-ounce pot of French press coffee, black and bitter. I drank the first cup standing at the window, watching the sun rise over the gardens I had planted. He was expecting a wreck. He was going to get a razor. At exactly 7 a.m., I picked up my phone. I did not call a divorce lawyer. I called my best friend, David. David is not a therapist. He is a forensic accountant, and he is the most cynical, brilliant man I have ever known. He picked up on the second ring, his voice gravelly with sleep. "This better be good." "David," I said. My voice was perfectly even. It did not waver. "I need a favor." A pause. He was instantly awake. He knew my work voice. "What is wrong?" "I need you to run a full analysis on every financial transaction Marcus has made for the past 5 years. His personal accounts, his business accounts, Viridian Dynamics, everything. I need to know where every single dollar I earned went, where his supposed investments are, and who Sloan Davenport and Isabel Vance are." "Sloan Davenport, the VC partner." David's voice sharpened. "Ilara, what is going on?" "Marcus left last night. He is planning to sell the house and strip me of everything. I believe his entire company is a fraud, and he has been funneling our money to his ex-wife." There was a long, heavy silence on the other end. Then, a quiet, impressed whistle. "Okay, send me what you have. I am on it. What else?" "I need a name," I said, pouring my second cup of coffee. "What name?" "The best divorce lawyer in Charleston." "No, forget Charleston. The best one on the East Coast. I do not want the one who negotiates. I want the one you call when you want to absolutely, legally destroy someone." I want a shark. David's shark had a name, Annalise Davenport. Her office was not a cozy, wood-paneled room meant for comforting tearful clients. It was on the top floor of a steel and glass tower overlooking the harbor, a place designed for high-stakes corporate litigation. The air was cold. Ms. Davenport was colder. She was all sharp angles and sharper eyes, dressed in a severe, impossibly expensive suit. She did not offer condolences. She did not offer tissues. She gestured to a chair, and I sat. David said it was urgent, she said, her voice a low, precise monotone. He said your husband left you. He did, I said. But that is not the problem. I opened my briefcase. I did not pull out a crumpled picture of us in happier times. I pulled out the file I had spent the past day compiling. I had printed every screenshot. I had created a timeline. I had cross-referenced the messages with our financial statements. At the front, I had placed the diagram I drew on the legal pad, Marcus, his 3 women, and the house in the center. I pushed it across the vast, empty expanse of her desk. I believe this is the problem. It is not an affair. It is a conspiracy to commit fraud. She did not answer. She simply opened the binder. Her eyes, sharp as scalpels, scanned the pages. She read my notes, absorbed the messages from Jenna, then the colder ones from Sloane, and finally, the toxic intimacy of the texts from Isabel. She read for a full 10 minutes, her expression utterly unreadable. I did not fidget. I did not cry. I waited. Finally, she closed the binder, placing her hands on top of it. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes. It was not sympathy. It was appreciation. Mrs. Thornton, she said, a very faint, very thin smile touching her lips. You are quite right. This is not a divorce. This is fraud. Your husband, and his associates, are planning to liquidate your primary asset to fund a new life, based on what appears to be a fraudulent company. The validation was like a shot of adrenaline. What do? First, we do not react as he expects, Annalise said, leaning forward. He wants you to file for divorce on grounds of adultery. He wants you hysterical, focused on Jenna. He wants this in family court, where he can argue for his half, force a sale, and be gone before the dust settles. We will not be doing that. She stood, pacing once toward the window that viewed the entire city. Our response is not defensive. It is offensive. He wants the house. We will argue that he has no claim to it. We will prove that he systematically and illegally used marital funds that I suspect are primarily your funds to finance his shell company and defraud investors. This is a gross violation of marital fiduciary duty. It invalidates his entire claim. I felt a cold thrill. She was speaking my language. So we prove the fraud first. We do, she said. And while we do that, you protect yourself. Immediately. I did not even wait to leave her office. I was on the phone with my business manager before the elevator hit the lobby. I need to restructure Alara Designs LLC, I said, my voice low. I want it moved into an irrevocable trust. As of yesterday, I want it firewalled from my personal assets. My next call was to the man Annalise recommended, a private investigator named Kincaid. He was not the polished corporate type. He was a rumpled ex-cop who sounded like he smoked 3 packs a day. I do not need photos of him in bed, I told Kincaid, standing on the curb as the city rushed by. I do not care about the assistant. I need you on Sloane Davenport. I need you on Viridian Dynamics. I need to know where the money is. I need proof of the financial conspiracy. The information came back faster than I could have imagined. David, my forensic accountant, delivered the first blow 2 days later. He did it. Alara, David said, his voice grim over the phone. Viridian Dynamics is a complete shell. It has no employees. Besides Jenna, it has no product. It is just an entity for receiving wire transfers. Kincaid's report came an hour after, providing the color to David's numbers. He had photos of Marcus and Sloane, not at a romantic dinner, but meeting with offshore banking specialists. He had documentation. The real poison, the detail that made me grip the edge of my kitchen counter until my knuckles turned white, was in the investor prospectus Kincaid had managed to acquire. Marcus was not just selling a vague tech idea, he was selling me. The prospectus was full of photos of my house, the restoration project, the magazine spreads, my name, my reputation. He had used my 5 years of work, my pedigree, and my success to legitimize his scam. He was telling investors that Viridian Dynamics was backed by the same vision that had restored the mansion. He was not just stealing my money, he was stealing my life. It arrived on a Friday morning, the day the appraisal was supposed to happen, not by mail, but by a stone-faced courier who required my signature. The weight of the envelope was substantial. I did not open it in the hall. I took it to the library, to the desk where I had first uncovered the plot. I slit the envelope open with a 19th century letter opener. The documents were just as Annalise had predicted, aggressive, brutal. It was a formal petition for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. And there, at the bottom of the first page, was the signature, Sloane Davenport, counsel for the plaintiff. The audacity of it, the sheer arrogant gall was breathtaking. She was not even a divorce attorney. She was a fund manager, a co-conspirator, now masquerading as his legal counsel. The terms were designed to incinerate me. They demanded the immediate court-ordered sale of our home, my home, to prevent degradation of the asset by my continued financial mismanagement. It demanded 50% of all marital assets. And then, the killing blow a line item claiming a 50% stake in the future value of Elara Designs LLC, which it valued at a shockingly high 7-figure sum. He was not just trying to take the house. He was trying to take my company, my future, my name, all of it. He was trying to take the investor-attracting reputation he had put in his fraudulent prospectus. I read the entire document, my blood turning to ice. My first instinct was to call Annalise, to unleash the hounds, to file our countersuit filled with fraud and conspiracy. But I remembered her instructions. He is expecting a fight, Mrs. Thornton, or a collapse. We will give him the collapse. He needs to believe you are exactly the woman he left, broken, confused, easy. He has to lower his shield. I picked up my phone. I stared at his name. I practiced the voice in my head. I thought about the woman I was a week ago, the one who would have been shattered by this. I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to summon the tears I no longer had. Then, I dialed. He picked up on the 4th ring. Elara. His voice was wary, guarded. I let out the breath as a sob. Marcus. Oh God, Marcus. Elara, what is it? What is wrong? I just got something, I stammered, making my voice crack. I got these papers from a courier, from a woman named Sloane Davenport. It says she's your lawyer. I layered the question with pathetic, wifely confusion. There was a pause, a calculated sigh. Yes, Elara, that is my attorney. I told you she would be in contact. But, Marcus, I let my voice break completely. I do not understand. I am reading this, and it cannot be right. It says you want to sell the house, our home. It says, half of my company. I pushed the hysteria, just as he would expect. Marcus, I cannot lose the house. I cannot. Please, this is a mistake. Right. Tell me this is a mistake. The condescension in his voice, when it came, was so thick I could have choked on it. It was a soothing, patronizing tone, the one he used when I was overwrought about a budget. Elara, just calm down, breathe, he said, like he was talking a child off a ledge. You are not understanding the legal language. You are getting emotional. But it says, I know what it says. He cut me off, but his voice was gentle. Sloane is just being aggressive. That is what lawyers do. It is standard procedure. It is just business. Business, I wailed. This is our life. Alara, listen to me, he said, and I could practically hear him smiling, sensing his complete control. You are clearly not in a state to understand the terms. This is not how I wanted this to go. I wanted this to be amicable. I do not know what to do, I whispered, the picture of a woman defeated. Look, he said, his voice softening into the protector role he loved to play. Let us meet. Just you and me. We can discuss the terms, in a civilized way. I will walk you through it, help you understand what is fair. We can get a coffee, or something. This was it. The moment Annalise had predicted. He thought I was too broken and too stupid to hire my own shark. He thought he could sit me down, explain the theft as a fair settlement, and get me to sign everything away in a flood of tears. Oh, Marcus, would you? I breathed, flooding my voice with pathetic gratitude. Yes, please. I am so lost. I do not understand any of this. Thank you. Of course, he said, his voice now rich with false magnanimity. I am still looking out for you, Alara. I always will be. How about tomorrow, the cafe at the Bennett? Yes, I whispered. Thank you. I hung up the phone. The tears, the shaking, the panicked voice, they all vanished in an instant. I stood up tall, my spine rigid. I looked at the divorce petition on my desk. He was not just coming to discuss terms. He was coming to gloat. I picked up my phone again and dialed Annalise. He is meeting me tomorrow, I said, my voice cold and clear. He thinks I am broken. He thinks he is coming to a negotiation. He is wrong. The Bennett was his choice. Of course. It was all dark wood, hushed service, and the smell of old money and new martinis. It was a power room, and he was waiting when I arrived, already seated in a corner booth, looking completely, infuriatingly, at ease. He looked relaxed, tan, like a man who had just shed a great heavy burden. He looked, I realized with a fresh sting of bile, happy. I had dressed the part. No armor today. I wore a soft, pale gray cashmere sweater, a color I knew washed me out. I had put my hair up, but I had let strands fall to frame my face. I looked like a woman who had been crying for a week. I looked like a victim. Taped just beneath my ribs, cold against my skin, was the high-fidelity digital recorder Annalise had insisted on. It felt like a block of ice, a secret ballast. Marcus, I said, my voice intentionally breathy, sliding into the booth. Alara, you look tired, he said. It was not an observation of concern. It was a statement of fact, a confirmation of his victory. I ordered you a chamomile tea. The condescension, thick and soothing. Check. Thank you for coming, I whispered, clasping my hands on the white linen tablecloth. I let them tremble. Just slightly. I was so upset when I got those papers. Of course, he said, signaling the waiter. I was worried. As I said, Sloane is just efficient. That is just how these things start. I told you, we can handle this like adults. Amicably. I looked down, gathering the performance. I summoned the memory of Isabel's messages, of Sloane's cold calculations, and I used the rage, channeling it not into strength, but into a perfect imitation of fragility. I know, I said, looking up, letting my eyes be wide and wet. I know. After I calmed down, I read them again. And, Marcus, you were right. His eyes sharpened, just a fraction. He leaned in almost imperceptibly. Right about what, Alara? About the house, I said, and I managed to make my voice crack. I spent too much. I see it now. I was obsessed. I was reckless. You were right to be angry. I just can't lose it. It is all I have. I let a single tear slide down my cheek. A perfectly calculated drop of salt. This was the woman he needed me to be. The emotional, financially irresponsible artist who had flown too close to the sun. He softened visibly, the mask of the magnanimous victor sliding perfectly into place. He even reached across the table to pat my hand. The touch was repulsive. It felt like a spider. "Ilara, I do not want to leave you with nothing," he said, his voice dripping with false pity. "We just need to be realistic about the assets." "But I found a way," I interrupted, letting my voice fill with a desperate, dawning hope. "I think I found a way to make it work, to pay you what you're owed, to give you what you want." His hand stopped patting mine. It just rested there. "What are you talking about?" This was it. The lure. The script Annalise and I had rehearsed for hours. A few days ago, right after you left. Actually, I got a call from an investment group in New York. They want to buy Ilara Designs. He froze. I saw his knuckles, which had been resting so casually on my hand, tighten. "Buy your company." "Yes. They said they have been watching my work with the restoration projects, all the press on the house. They made an offer." "What offer?" His voice was no longer soft. It was sharp. A huge one. "Marcus," I said, widening my eyes. I was shocked. It's a ridiculous number. It is an 8-figure number." I watched the mask. It stayed in place. But his eyes were moving. The look of pity was gone, instantly replaced by the rapid-fire calculation of a predator that just smelled a second, larger kill. He was not just getting Isabel and the money from the house. He was now getting a cut of this new, massive windfall. "Ilara," he said, and his voice was completely different. The false sympathy had evaporated. It was replaced by a new, urgent condescension. He was no longer the sad ex-husband. He was the financial consultant. What group? You did not sign anything? Did you?" No. They just sent the preliminary contract. I have it in my bag." "Ilara, for God's sake," he snapped, leaning across the table. His mask of kindness was completely gone, replaced by frustration. "You cannot handle this. You are in no state to be making 8-figure deals. They are going to rob you blind. You are emotional. You do not know what you are doing." "I thought?" "No," he said, holding up a hand. "You thought wrong. You need me to look at this." He was the protector again, but this time, I could see what he was protecting. He was protecting his stake in the new money. "Oh," I said, a masterpiece of confusion. "But Sloane is your lawyer. She would—" "This is not for Sloane," he said quickly, his eyes darting around as if a competitor might overhear. This is our asset. We are still married, Ilara. Legally, I have a right to review this, to protect our interests." "Our interests?" "Yes. I will look at the contract. I will make sure they are not screwing you. I will make sure the valuation is accurate." He was already inserting himself, positioning himself, not as my enemy, but as my partner. I let out a shuddering breath, one of pure, unadulterated relief, but not for the reason he thought. "Oh, Marcus, would you—" I whispered, playing the part of the damsel in distress to the hilt. "I am just so scared. I do not understand any of the legal language." "I will handle it," he said, patting my hand again, a gesture of ownership. "Set up the meeting. Tell them your financial advisor will be attending." The trap snapped shut. You want to meet them." "I insist," he said, his voice firm, final. "I am not letting you get fleeced. Ilara, I will sit in. I will make sure this deal is solid." He did not just want to review the deal. He wanted in on the deal. He wanted his cut. The bait, so perfectly placed by Annalise, had been taken. "Okay," I said, wiping my eyes. "Okay. I will." His greed was a living thing. It was so hungry, so predictable. It had sealed his fate the moment I said 8 figures. He had no idea he was a fish swimming toward a hook. He thought he was a shark, circling for a second meal. I called him the next day, my voice full of the grateful but nervous energy he expected. "Marcus," I said, keeping my voice low, as if I were telling a secret. I told them, the investors. I told them my financial advisor wanted to be present for the next meeting. Good. His voice was crisp. All business. When is it? Well, that is the thing, I said, a perfect imitation of hesitation. They want to meet soon, and I was thinking, maybe we should have them here, at the house. At the house. Why? There was suspicion in his voice, the first note of caution. I was ready for it. Because, well, it is what they are buying. Isn't it? The idea of it. My prospectus. My work. It is all here. I want to show them the library, the restoration on the ballroom ceiling. I want them to see the value. I want them to understand what my company, Elara Designs, is truly worth, so they do not, try to lower the price. I heard him exhale. It was the sound of a man relaxing, his suspicion replaced by renewed greed. Of course. The house was the asset that proved the value of the company he was now trying to take. He saw it as a sales pitch, one that he could help control. And Marcus, I added. Sloane. She should come too. Right. Since she is your counsel, she should be there to protect our interests from the legal side. A longer pause. He was connecting the dots, seeing the brilliance of his plan. He would have his financial partner and his legal counsel both in the room, surrounding me, managing my sale for his benefit. That's smart, Elara, he said, and the approval in his voice was sickening. Yes, that is very smart. I will tell Sloane. We will both be there. Just set the time. The moment I hung up, the facade dropped. I spent the next 2 days not as a victim, but as a general. My house became a war room. The calls were constant, but silent. Text chains and encrypted emails flew between me. Annalise Davenport, David, and a new team, a quiet, efficient group of colleagues Annalise brought in. Men and women who never gave their full names, who spoke in terms of compliance and federal statutes. David had the final package on the fraud, a timeline of money moving from my accounts to Viridian, and then out to offshore accounts linked to Sloane and, finally, to a trust in Austin under Isabel's name. It was beautiful, in its own horrifying way. Annalise was coordinating the investors from New York who were not, as it turned in New York at all. They were already in Charleston, waiting for her signal. On the afternoon of the second day, I got a call from Kincaid, the private investigator. "You are going to like this," he rumbled. "Your husband is a real piece of work." "What did you find?" "Flight manifests. He is flying solo. But guess who else is landing at Charleston International an hour before your little meeting, Jenna and Isabel? Separate flights, both from different cities. And they are not just here for the day. He booked them both a suite at the Bennett. A celebration. I am guessing. The sheer, unadulterated arrogance of it. He was not just planning to rob me. He was planning a victory party with all 3 of his conspirators. He was bringing his entire shadow life into my city, ready to toast their success as I signed my own execution warrant. "Thank you, Kincaid," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Send the details to Ms. Davenport. They are all invited." That evening, I did not work. I did not plan. I walked. I started in the foyer, my hand on the smooth, cool plaster of the grand staircase. I had sourced this plaster from a heritage supplier in Virginia. I had matched the pigment myself. I went into the library, running my fingers over the spines of the books I had curated, standing on the antique Persian rug I had won at auction. I went into the ballroom, staring up at the ceiling rosette I had spent 3 weeks restoring on my back. on scaffolding, just like Michelangelo, my arm aching until I thought it would fall off. Every detail. The hand-planed hardwood floors, the brass fittings I had salvaged and polished, the 19th century stained glass in the transom that caught the afternoon light. Every single inch of this house was a memory of my love, my sweat, my expertise. He had called it my extravagance, my obsession. He was right. It was. He thought he was coming here tomorrow to take my house. He thought he was walking into an asset to be liquidated. He was wrong. I was not fighting for this house anymore. I was fighting from it. This was not a prize. This was my fortress. And he was walking, willingly, into the trap. The day arrived with a stillness that felt wrong. The air in the mansion was heavy, soundless, as if the house itself were holding its breath. There was no bustle of preparation, no nervous energy. There was only a profound, waiting quiet. I was in the library. I had been there since dawn, seated in the high-backed reading chair, perfectly calm. I was on my second cup of Earl Grey tea. The silver tray was polished. The porcelain was my grandmother's. Everything was civilized. Everything was in its place. At precisely 10 o'clock, the doorbell chimed. The sound echoed through the grand hall like a gunshot. I did not get up. I waited. I heard my housekeeper, who I had instructed to be here, open the door. I heard his voice, Marcus, confident, charming, false. And then, a woman's voice, clipped and sharp. Sloane. They appeared in the doorway of the library. They were a matched set, both in severe, dark business suits, tailored to perfection. They looked less like they were attending a meeting and more like they were staging a hostile takeover, which, of course, they were. Marcus smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Alara, you are ready. Sloane did not smile at all. She swept into the room, her eyes not on me, but on the room itself. She was scanning the custom-built mahogany shelves, the restored ceiling, the leather-bound books. She was not admiring, she was calculating. Good choice of venue, Sloane said, her voice as dry as ash. It packages the product well. The product, my home, my work. Please, sit down, I said, gesturing to the two expensive, uncomfortable chairs I had placed opposite my desk. Can I offer you some tea? They looked surprised by the offer, by my calm. This was not the sobbing wreck Marcus had met at the Bennett. This was someone else. But their arrogance was too thick to allow for genuine suspicion. They just assumed I was medicated, or perhaps resigned to my fate. Coffee, black, Sloane said, sitting on the edge of the chair, placing her leather briefcase on the floor. Marcus, nothing for me, he said. He was too agitated to sit. He began to pace the room, restless, energetic. Where are they? Alara. The investors. They are not here. They are on their way, I said calmly, rising to pour Sloane a cup of coffee from the pot I had ready. They were delayed slightly. He grunted, impatient. He stopped in front of the fireplace. Picking up a Sèvres porcelain vase I had spent a month sourcing, he examined the bottom of it, like he was checking a price tag. This is good, he said. Not to me, but to Sloane. The market is hot for this kind of history. We can liquidate the contents separately from the house itself. Maximize the return. Sloane nodded, taking the coffee. Agreed. Now, Alara, while we wait, Marcus and I feel it is important to discuss our fiduciary duty here. As your advisors in this sale, we need to optimize the structure. She was already talking. She could not even wait for the investors. The greed was rolling off them in waves. With the house sale and the company sale happening concurrently, Sloane continued, pulling a pen from her jacket, we can roll the capital from the house into a joint trust, which will then be used as the primary leverage point in the company acquisition. It simplifies the tax burden and consolidates the process. I just smiled and sat down, sipping my tea, letting her talk. I let them plan my financial ruin. right here in my own library. I watched Marcus, who had stopped listening to Sloane's jargon and was now running his hand along the spine of a first edition book, his eyes gleaming. He was already spending the money. He was already in Austin, with Isabel. The air in the room grew thicker. The silence between Sloane's cold, technical monologues was deafening. It was the silence of a held breath, of a trigger being slowly squeezed. The only sound was the clicking of Sloane's pen and the soft scrape of Marcus's expensive shoe on my hardwood floors. My skin prickled. Any minute now. I let them go on for another 5 minutes. Sloane was explaining how my company's valuation could be enhanced if we included the intellectual property from the restoration, effectively giving them my entire career. Marcus was nodding, adding, "Exactly. It is all one brand. My brand, my life." Right on cue, my phone, which I had placed face up on the desk, vibrated. The screen did not light up. It was a silent notification, one I had preset. I picked it up, a small, apologetic smile on my face. "Excuse me, this might be them, checking in." I looked at the screen. It was not the investors. It was a text from Kincaid. "Jenna and Isabel have landed, both at the coffee shop 2 blocks away, waiting for the call. All the pieces were on the board, the decoys, the conspirators, the sharks, and me." I placed the phone back on the desk, face down. I looked up at them. Marcus had finally stopped pacing. Sloane had stopped talking. They were both looking at me, expectant, impatient, like wolves waiting for the signal to eat. "Was that them?" Marcus demanded. "No," I said, and I allowed myself a small, genuine smile. "Just a final confirmation. It seems everyone is in place." The politeness was gone from my voice. The fragility was gone. I could see the first flicker of confusion in Marcus's eyes. He had heard the shift. He just did not understand it yet. "Good," Sloane said, glancing at her watch. "Let's hope they get here soon. We have a lot to get through." "Oh, I do not think it will take long at all," I said. And right at that moment, the doorbell rang again. "They are here," I said, my voice clear and bright in the suffocating silence. Marcus and Sloane both flinched at the sound of the bell. I stood up slowly, smoothing the front of my dress. I did not ask the housekeeper. I went myself. I walked the long hall, my heels clicking decisively on the heart pine floor I had restored. I opened the massive cypress door. Annalise Davenport stood on my porch, her expression like a honed blade. She was flanked by 2 tall men in dark, severe suits that screamed federal government. "Ms. Davenport," I said. "Thank you for coming. The advisors are in the library." I walked back in. Annalise and the 2 men following me. Marcus and Sloane were both standing, having gotten up in their impatience. The color drained from Marcus's face the moment he saw Annalise, followed by the 2 agents. Sloane's eyes went wide with genuine panic. "What is this? Ilara!" Marcus snarled, his voice dropping the civilized pretense. "Who the hell are these people? These are your investors." "Marcus," Annalise said, her voice cutting through the room. She stepped forward and threw a thick, bound document onto my mahogany desk. It landed with a heavy, final thud. Or perhaps, more accurately, they are the people who investigate what you did to your real investors. Marcus lunged for the document, but Annalise put her hand on it. "This is your investor meeting. And that," she said, nodding to a separate blue-backed paper one of the agents was holding, "is a warrant for your arrest, wire fraud, conspiracy, and several counts of interstate financial crimes." Sloane made a sound, a high-pitched squeak of terror. She grabbed her briefcase and spun toward the door. A full-on sprint. The second agent, who had been standing quietly by the doorway, simply took 1 step to the side, blocking her path. She ran right into him and bounced back, stumbling. I finally stood up from behind my desk. All the adrenaline, all the rage I had suppressed for weeks, was now cold, clean, and focused. You were right, Marcus, I said, my voice conversational. He turned his gaze from the warrant to me. His face was a mask of disbelief and fury. You were right. The market is hot for this house. Alara, he started, a threat in his voice. You used my company, I continued, walking toward him. My reputation, the one I spent 15 years building, and you put it in your fake prospectus. You used my name and my money to defraud investors. Marcus, real investors, all of it. All just so you could liquidate my life, destroy my work, and run off to Austin with your ex-wife. The blood drained from his face, leaving a pasty, gray pallor. The confusion was gone. The fury was gone. All that was left was the hollow look of a man who had been completely and totally outplayed. You, he whispered, his eyes wide. You knew. You knew about Isabel. You left your tablet, Marcus, I said, stopping just feet from him. You wanted me to find Jenna. You underestimated me. You thought I would fight the affair, not the fraud. As I said it, Annalise's phone buzzed on the desk. She glanced at it, and, right on time, a second team just picked up Jenna and Isabel at the coffee shop down the street. It seems they were waiting for your victory call. Marcus, they have been arrested as co-conspirators. Marcus looked at Sloane, who was hyperventilating by the door, and then back at me. The agent stepped forward, holding the handcuffs. Marcus Thornton, you are under arrest. The agent pulled Marcus's hands behind his back. The sharp, metallic click of the handcuffs locking echoed in my beautiful library. This was the sound I had been waiting for. She made me do it, Sloane suddenly shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at Marcus. He coerced me. He said the investments were real. I am a victim. He lied to me. Save it, Ms. Davenport. Annalise said, we have the wire transfers to your shell accounts. Marcus just stared at me as they pulled him toward the door. His eyes were no longer cold, just empty. He was a shell company, just like Viridian. The fallout was exactly as Annalise had planned. It was not a divorce. It was a criminal proceeding, followed by an asset forfeiture. In divorce court, Annalise presented the criminal convictions for fraud. She argued, successfully, that Marcus's actions were not just infidelity, they were a profound breach of marital fiduciary duty. He had actively stolen and misused marital assets in the commission of multiple felonies. The judge agreed. The divorce petition he had served me was thrown out. Our marriage was dissolved, and the judgment was not a 50-50 split. It was restitution. I was awarded 100% of all remaining marital assets, including the hollowed-out shell of Viridian Dynamics and all the offshore accounts David had found as compensation for the damages and the massive tax liabilities his fraud had incurred. I got the house. I got my company. I got my name back. 6 months later, the garden was in full bloom, the roses and jasmine I had planted hanging heavy in the warm Charleston air. The house was not quiet. It was filled with light and laughter and music, the sound of my friends, my real friends, mingling on the lawn. I was hosting a party, a celebration of the restoration's completion. I was holding a glass of champagne when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the notification. It was an email from Annalise, the subject sentencing Thornton. I opened it. Marcus had received his sentence. 15 years in federal prison. Sloane and Isabel, having testified against him in a desperate attempt to save themselves, received lighter sentences. 3 years for Sloane, 18 months for Isabel. I read the message. I looked up at my house, standing magnificent in the golden afternoon light. I looked at the smiling faces around me. Then, I hit delete on the email. I took a sip of my champagne. It was cold and bright and perfect. The house was safe, and so was I. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am so curious where everyone is listening from, so please drop a comment below and let me know, and we can all connect and share our thoughts. Make sure you subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories and like this video. And if you can, please support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.